Hello everyone, welcome to Storytime with Miss Guzman. Today I'll be reading Junie B. Jones' Cheater Pants by Barbara Park. And we're reading chapter 2. Yesterday we learned that May had finished all of the homework that the students were supposed to do over the weekend, and Junie B. Jones had not done it. Okay, and then we see that when May leaves the room to go turn in the attendance slip, that Junie B. Jones looks over at her paper and copies what she wrote. So now we're going to be seeing what happens next. So chapter 2 is called Weekend Fun. May got back from the office. She stood at the door and waved again. I did it, everyone. I got the attendance sheet to the office just like I promised. She looked at Mr. Scary. It went very well too, she said. There were no problems I couldn't handle. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. Okay, well, thank you. May, you can take your seat now, please, he said. But May kept right on talking. At first, I didn't know where to put it, but then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket. So I followed her directions perfectly, she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. Excellent, he said. Now please sit down, okay? May didn't pay attention again. When I was in kindergarten, I got an E+ for following directions, she said. E+ is better than excellent. The plus sign means extra, extra excellent. Just then, Mr. Scary stood up and he took May's hand and he walked her to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something nice to say to her, 'cause I was still happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped on her arm and I smiled. Welcome back, madam, I said real friendly. May did a frown at me. What kind of crack was that? She said. I just looked at her. Friendly does not come natural to us, I think. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk and he walked to the board and he wrote these words. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was... Okay, everyone, he said. For your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete that sentence, remember? Room 1 nodded. Good, said Mr. Scary, because this morning, I'd like for each of you to read your homework paper to the class. That way, we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Doesn't that sound fun? Room 1 nodded again. Even if it doesn't sound fun, you still have to nod. So this is Mr. Scary, her first grade teacher, and that's what he wrote on the board, the journal that they were supposed to do over the weekend. So it says, this weekend, one thing I did for fun was, and Junie B. Jones copied what May wrote. So she's gonna say exactly what May is going to say, right? So let's see. It says, Mr. Scary smiled. We'll go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn. He pointed at Lucille. Lucille, why don't you start us off? He said. Lucille sits in the first row by the window. Last year, me and her were bestest friends. But this year, we're just regular. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself. Then she picked up her paper and she started to read. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon and both of us got manicures and pedicures. Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. You got a pedicure, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it? He said. Lucille shrugged. For some people, maybe, she said. She looked down and kept on reading. Also, we each got a papaya fruit facial. And Nana got an herbal body wrap. Plus, I got a seaweed scalp massage. Mr. Scary stood there for a second. Then he nodded very slow. All righty then, he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chanel. Those two are twins. Camille stood up. This weekend, Chanel and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box. And we put on a show for our little brother Neil. Mr. Scary beamed at that news. Oh, that's great, girls, he said. I bet doing a puppet show for your brother was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Not really, said Camille. Neil kept on grabbing the puppets off our hands, and he made them kill each other. We don't like Neil, said Chanel. Neil is a Bob, said Camille. Mr. Scary just stood there some more. Then finally he moved on to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get pizza with my dad. And I ate a whole entire anchovy. And I didn't throw up till I was almost home. Room 1 clap and clap for that amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekend. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn because I love to talk in front of the class. Of course, plus all I had to do was tell about my weekend and Mr. Scary would think I did my homework. I put the paper I copied from me into my desk. I didn't need it after all. Because what do you know? Today, I lucked out. So that's the end of chapter 2. And this is Robert sharing with the class. So I guess she didn't need that paper. And she's just going to tell everybody what she did on the weekend. But she still didn't do her homework, right? So we don't know what's going to happen with that. Maybe Mr. Scary is going to ask her to read it. Maybe he's going to say that she's not supposed to just say it, that he needs the paper. So I don't know what's going to happen next. What do you think is going to happen? I want you to think about that for today. And I want to thank you for listening to this read aloud. Tomorrow we'll be reading chapter 3. And so I'll be seeing you guys later on. Thank you for watching.